The Ravens will make their preseason opener against a familiar opponent or somewhat familiar foe. The Philadelphia Eagles will travel down I-95 on Friday evening and play in M&T Bank Stadium. Game one, or week one for the Ravens, at least, of the NFL's preseason. Of course, they've been announcing in the last 4 or 5 hours, at least in my news cycle, which Ravens players will not participate. It's kind of crazy, the articles that come out. Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry won't play in the preseason. We knew that. I had already gone back today, Thursday, as I record this, and watched last year's game against the Eagles. And it was pretty telling who did and do not play in that matchup. The Ravens offense will certainly be led by Josh Johnson tomorrow night. Devin Leary, and then I guess perhaps Emory Jones will get some run, who has one of the most ironic and interesting names I've ever heard for a pro athlete in the Maryland area. Harbaugh seems to have adjusted his preseason approach since J.K. Dobbins got hurt against Washington in late 2021 preseason. I think it's the right move. There's nothing to gain for so many of the guys on the Ravens roster. Only momentum to lose if you expose some of your proven talent in what, for most of us, is a meaningless preseason game. Now, I say meaningless with air quotes around it, though, because it does have meaning for a number of the younger guys or those trying to move up the depth chart or some that are just trying to make the roster. The O-line situation, for me, is going to be the most noteworthy situation of the whole game. Who gets a lot of reps in this game may kind of let us know where the coaches are. For example, if Ben Cleveland plays 100% of the snaps tonight, that could mean he's looked at as the eighth man or the ninth man off the bench or the fourth guy, after the 5 starters. I just use Cleveland as an example there. It could be Josh Jones. It could be anyone. I am really looking forward to seeing Roger Rosengarten get a lot of reps and experience. And the Eagles have a lot of talent up front in their front 6, front 7, D-line, outside linebacker, inside linebacker positions. They've got a lot of talent on our whole roster, period, actually. I think their front office has done a great job of acquiring talent throughout the draft, very similar to the Ravens in a lot of ways. I know they traded for A.J. Brown, signed some free agents this offseason, most notably Saquon Barkley and C.J. Gardner-Johnson. But they're built with a lot of talent up front on the defensive side of the ball. Bryce Huff was a key free agent acquisition for them after stacking up 10 sacks in 2023 with the Jets. This will be a challenge, I think, for the Ravens' second-string offensive guys. Josh Johnson struggled with interceptions in training camp, starting from the first few practices where we got information from. As fans, we got updates on, it seemed like more, but only 2 or 3 or 4 interceptions each day by the defense. It felt like about 5 or 6. Of course, there was that week where Lamar was not practicing. Josh Johnson is now on his 14th team, which is, I think, an NFL record. Now the backup. He's moved up to being the backup this year after Tyler Huntley's departure. Johnson, if you recall, had some really good moments in last year's preseason in all 3 games. I think he'll be in control of the offense, as experienced as he is, first of all. He's a fun player to watch at 38 years old. If you don't know, he once had a season in college, I think it was his junior year, maybe his senior year, where he was 43 touchdowns to 1 interception. Pretty ridiculous numbers. Hung around the league, bounced around a couple of other professional leagues as well. Last year in the preseason, he oftentimes made things look really easy. Him, Justice Hill, Zay Flowers, at times, it was almost like those guys didn't even belong on the field because they were able to make so many plays. If Johnson plays an entire half, I feel like it's almost a guarantee we're going to score 2 touchdowns somewhere across the 5 or 6 possessions. Maybe not like the drive that's coming up against the Bucs from week 3 of last year's preseason. I think that was actually against a lot of the Bucs starters. And the Ravens backups ripped right downfield. 4 plays, 80 yards, capped by the touchdown pass to Laquan Treadwell that I think you'll see in a moment. How much will we see Devin Leary and Jones? Hopefully for a half. I'm okay if we play Josh Johnson a quarter. I'm okay if we play him a half. I'm interested in the other guys that are on our roster that would be considered second or third string, more so than guys who are second string and going to be on the field a lot, meaning I don't need to see Justice Hill. It'd be unfair for him to be on the field a lot. I think offensively we're going to be deep down the depth chart at the skill positions. And what I mean by that is there's still interesting guys to watch beyond Flowers, who obviously won't play, Justice Hill, even Charlie Kolar. There's Dayton Wade, Sean Ryan, Malik Cunningham, almost forgot him, and Devontae Walker. Maybe he plays. Kolar, Kadir Ismail. All of those position players have talent and ability. They're all exciting guys that'll be at the bottom of our depth chart if they're on there at all during the regular season. For me, the offensive line is where I'm most interested. That side of the ball, who plays, how well they play, obviously, and then also the reps that certain guys get. What does it mean? So if you don't play at all, you could be protected from risk, protected from injury. That's the reason why you're not playing. Like, take for the extreme example, Ronnie Stanley. Obviously, he's not going to play a single snap, and he shouldn't. We wouldn't want to see him. But I think it's also telling for some of the other guys that are supposedly competing for starting spots, particularly on the right side of the offensive line. Those that are protected from risk, protected from potential injury. Finally, how much do we see some of Todd Monken's patented boundary side attack, which is what you see here is kind of like a little snag and go, the touchdown to Treadwell over the middle. How much do we see from Monken in terms of attacking to the boundary, really out of 11 personnel, forcing the defense to account for the boundary side of away from the nickel defender, which is actually something that the Eagles did extremely well against Mike Macdonald's defense last year. Mike Macdonald has obviously since departed to be the head coach of the Seahawks. Zach Orr will be his first game calling the plays, calling the defense. He's been the defensive coordinator in charge for months now, obviously, at mini camps and now training camp. Will there be a huge difference in what Zach Orr calls Friday night against the Eagles versus what he'll call in the regular season? No idea. I would not think so. I think you'll probably see our base defense. Against 11 personnel, you're going to be in your nickel front, which is 70% of the time, according to the Eagles offense the last 2 years, regardless of who the coordinator has been. We have to give Mike Macdonald credit for what he did in 2022 and then turning it up to a historic volume in 2023. But one thing to note is we did struggle with our boundary side run defense, something that a couple of guys have talked about in our Discord often. And if you recall, against the Eagles last year, the Eagles were in 11 personnel, like I said, 70% of the time the last 2 seasons. Under a new offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore, how much of that is going to change? They apparently don't use a ton of motion. But the dynamic that I'm talking about, boundary side run defense, boundary side defense overall, it was pretty severe in this game against the Eagles that you're seeing some film of. Now, the Ravens did win the game 20-19, but the opening 2 possessions for the Eagles were 14 plays field goal, 10 plays missed field goal. Well, let's do the third and fourth one, actually. 8 plays field goal, and then the fourth drive, an 11-play, 73-yard possession when a new quarterback entered the game. Actually, I'm mistaken there. I think the new quarterback, McKee, came in on the third possession. Marcus Mariota, if you recall, had played the first 2 possessions. The point here is, across 2 quarterbacks and multiple position players being shuffled in and out, the Eagles' scheme was causing us problems. It was. Am I saying I think the 2023 Eagles beat the Ravens starters? No. I mean, who cares, first of all, at that point? But maybe it depends on when we would play. The Eagles started out 10-1, but if we faced them later in the season, the Ravens' defense was obviously a juggernaut. This year, they'll face off in the regular season in Week 23. The questions I have are how we defend the run into the boundary. Some of the plays you saw there, just, consider them flavor. But also, which DBs do we put out on the field? Arthur Millett is out. Now, I don't think he would have played anyway, but this can have a trickle-down effect on everyone else. Obviously, Humphrey and Stevens will not play. Interestingly enough, Stevens played a lot of snaps in this game last year. You can actually see him at the bottom side of the screen right now. TJ Tampa won't return for a while from his injury. Trayvon Mullen is injured, so we might get an extended look at JAD and Pepe Williams. Both of those guys both of those guys need snaps. They need reps in games. They've each missed a significant amount of time. They're hoping to boost their standing in Baltimore. They've got significant hurdles, obviously, to just get on the field to try to find playing time in the regular season. I would also like to see who's rolled out there at outside linebacker for this Ravens defense this week. Multiple guys are untouchable, meaning their spot as a starter or second string guy, rotation guy is kind of secured. I think the Eagles attacked our boundary side outside linebackers so often last year. It'll be interesting to me not just to see who plays for the Ravens, but which guys are set into the boundaries out of 11 personnel. You don't have the nickel defender over there unless you're rolling the boundary side safety down, kind of skying him down or walking him down in the box. The boundary side outside linebacker is a little bit more stressed, particularly when the running back and the tight end are both set into the boundary, to the short side of the field. That is where the Eagles did a really good job attacking that area, that deficiency last year against the Ravens. They've got a new offensive coordinator today, being the Eagles, in Kellen Moore. He takes over for Brian Johnson. So will there be schematic changes? I don't think so. But from a personnel standpoint, there's definitely some differences. Marcus Mariota is gone, and now in his place, Kenny Pickett. I know for me at least, maybe for you, it'll be unusual seeing him in an Eagles uniform. It's also notable for me that John Ross is apparently on the roster. It's an amazing path that his career has taken. Hasn't produced as many highlights as people would have expected when I think he was a first-round pick, number 9 pick overall, 2016. I am most looking forward to the offensive line and then the Ravens defense, how they perform, whether certain guys play. I mean, let's be honest. Trenton Simpson needs reps, in my opinion at least. I would say he could get on the field at some point this preseason, but how much? I have no idea. Should he be out there in the first game? I tend to, last year I enjoyed Harbaugh's approach, meaning the first preseason game was all guys who were trying to move up the depth chart or they were trying to see what they were capable of. It's so unique what Brandon Stevens did last year, playing so much in the preseason and then becoming this really high-level corner in the regular season. So perhaps there's players like that this year. Is it JAD? Is it Pepe? I don't think so, just based on the film that we had seen of them, but hopefully they're completely healthy. They play a lot. Nate Wiggins, does he get out there? I wonder if they're going to be really cautious with the starting caliber DBs. Wiggins is apparently listed behind JAD on the depth chart. I have to believe that's an unofficial depth chart, but if you just do some quick math, Millette, Tampa, Mullen, all unable to play. Humphrey and Stevens will not be out there. It becomes interesting to see who gets on the field in the secondary. JAD and Pepe become guys who probably get 40-plus snaps, if not more, similar to Stevens last year. The only difference is they need time on the field. Maybe the Ravens coaching staff are trying to see what they're capable of, similar to Stevens last year. For me, it'll be enjoyable to see Orr call the game, to use his second and in some cases third string guys, how the defense holds up. You guys will have to let me know what you are most excited about seeing or which element of the game for the Ravens, Eagles you find interesting. I do want to mention one thing about the kickoffs, the kickoff returns. I expect something to happen in one of the 3 games Friday night. Now, I'm recording this Thursday, so the Thursday night games have not occurred. Something very well may happen tonight, Thursday, such that some of my words here get undercut. But we got nothing last week in the Texans-Bears game, and I mean nothing exciting out of those plays. There was a bunch of 8, 10, 15-yard returns there. Maybe that's an exaggeration. I think the ball really ended up being spotted almost exactly where a touchback would have been placed in previous seasons. I will be upfront. I am less intrigued or interested in the new kickoff rules than most people are. But I am expecting something explosive to happen in one of these 3 games Friday or the 2 games Thursday night, one of which includes the Lions. The Bears and Texans were really vanilla in that game last week. They both had defensively 2 safeties on each side, or 1 safety on each side, I should say, who would hang back once the gunners, I don't know what we call them now, were firing into their gaps, and the safeties were able to fold inside or outside and clean anything up. I think there was 8 kickoffs in the Hall of Fame game before the game was halted early by weather, and nothing happened for me other than a bunch of big pileups on direct flow. What I mean is direct flow, the returner catches the ball, mostly goes in a straight line. Maybe there's some slight cuts or veering off to avoid contact, but no scheme, no reverse, obviously no throwbacks, crisscross, or counter action at all, whereby I would classify it as direct flow. Again, I expect big plays to occur at some point on kickoffs. Between Thursday, Friday night would make sense because, and I'm not saying this from a conspiracy theory standpoint, but there's 5 games overall, which provides ample opportunity for someone on a kickoff to make a play and allow NFL fans and the NFL to highlight it and talk about how exciting the play now is versus previous seasons. My prediction is it's an opening kickoff, but I could be wrong. Again, I'm recording this Thursday. You guys may not listen to it until Friday. Anyway, I'll let you guys know my impressions and my thoughts after the game. When the Ravens play Friday night, I'm going to do a reaction video for each preseason game. Let me know in the comment section what your initial thoughts are, what your interest level is for the game overall, and then which players you can't wait to see compete. Granted, against the Eagles' second stringers, but it's a quality team, I would say, similarly built from an organizational standpoint to Baltimore in terms of the depth they have all across the width of the field. Appreciate you guys' time.